Hello. Today I'll be talking about how the Holy See can collaborate with the United Nations to solve international conflicts. First of all, many of you probably don't know what the Holy See is, so I'll give you a quick definition. It's the official governing body of the Roman Catholic Church located in the Vatican City of Rome in Italy. It consists of the Pope, currently Pope Francis, the Cardinal Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin, and the Roman Curia, which is basically a Congress of Bishops. Currently, the Holy See holds diplomatic relations with about 180 different nations, so they communicate, contact, and work with each other. According to Brett Schaefer, a researcher at the Institute of International Affairs at the Heritage Foundation, they are given the status of permanent observers of the UN because they can meet, debate, hold propositions, collect data, but they still cannot vote or pass resolutions the same way that the General Assembly can. Next, I'd like to focus on the UN and the main goals that they put in place. Many of you are probably familiar with the UN, but they give out many humanitarian efforts, especially in third world countries and countries that are suffering with war. But the three main goals can be boiled down into this: to preserve international peace and security, to coordinate international law and justice, and to become a center for orchestrating international actions of nations. Now that's all good and true, but how is this even a problem? This is a problem. It's actually a compound problem, and it has two parts. First of all, the first goal of the UN isn't being fulfilled through a lack of international security and peace. According to a study conducted by the Global Terrorism Database in 2018, global terrorism has seen an increase in a sharp spike. Between 1980 and 2012, there were an average of 3,000 terror-related incidents, but in 2013 to 2017, that number averaged 13,000, which is over a 400% increase. Secondly, in this compound problem, the next major UN goal is left unsatisfied through an international lack of law and justice. In the 2018 Global Peace Index, published by the Institute of Economics and Peace, shows that 92 countries, as you can see here, are shown in red, so they became more hostile, while only 71 became less hostile. Overall, that's a 27% deterioration in overall peace in the world. When I was researching through the stimulus material, I found that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from the Birmingham jail directly related to my problem. As you can see on this quote, he really addressed the problems that segregation caused in America during the Civil Rights Movement, but as a pastor and a religious man, he believed that the church was a very valuable resource to this problem. Now, this isn't far from the idea that the Holy See has the potential and the ability to better our world today. So this leads me to my argument. The Holy See needs to join the Security Council of the UN to bolster and improve the probability of achieving international peace, security, justice, and diplomacy between and in nations. First of all, I'd like to look at this through the historical lens or aspect. In modern history, popes have either been more or less active in political issues. An example of being inactive is Pope Pius XII. And according to Reverend Robert Graham, S.J., who specialized in Vatican history during World War II, he said, during the Holocaust, Pope Pius XII was condemned for not doing enough or showing enough support or meeting with international leaders to discuss what they could do to battle World War II. Because of this, he gave himself a legacy of being notoriously inactive and quiet, and that's why he went down as pretty much a bad pope. However, an example of being active could be John Paul II. According to Craig Shirley, historian of the Reagan era of politics from U.S. News and World Report, Pope John Paul II worked with presidents and prime ministers alike to disestablish communism in the USSR and most of Eastern Europe, along with all its evils. And to quote Mr. Shirley, he said that this set the standard of what popes should do with international leaders. Next, I'd like to look at the fact that the Holy See advocates peace. The Holy See used their minimal UN power to bring up various resolutions and treaties, as we saw with Resolution 2178 and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. According to Pietro Parolin, the current Cardinal Secretary of State of the UN, of the Holy See, People of faith have a grave responsibility to condemn those who seek to detach faith from reason and instrumentalize faith as a justification for violence. Basically, what he's saying here is that the church wants to take initiative and help international leaders, but they simply don't have the power to do such things. Lastly, I'd like to look at the influence that the Holy See and the Pope have alike. According to Forbes' Most Powerful Peoples list, Pope Francis was ranked 6th, higher than France's President Emmanuel Macron and the UK's Prime Minister Theresa May, both of which are on the UN Security Council permanently. According to Tim Burns of the Journal of the Review of Faith and International Affairs, he coined the term moral megaphone, which describes the action that the Pope takes. So basically, he reaches billions of Catholics every year through his encyclicals, sermons, and actions, but he reaches billions of more people through the media and press, documenting everything he says or does. Now, to conclude, the most effective solution to this problem is to promote the Holy See into the Security Council of the UN permanently. Now, this is limited by the fact that the General Assembly would have to pass this and resolve this issue, and even if they did, it would take a long time to completely eradicate terrorism or eradicate all wars. It wouldn't just happen overnight. Now, many do have a negative view of Catholics in their mostly conservative views regarding family planning or abortion matters, and they wouldn't want such matters imposed onto them through the UN. And many would also like to argue that this is pretty much the unification of church and state, having too much Catholic influence in the UN. But if that was the case, many Muslim or Islam-based governments would not be allowed into the UN. For example, Iran, Iraq, or Syria, who have their governments mainly controlled by their church. Now, if this is implied and incorporated, ultimately, this will lead to the satisfaction of the main 3 goals of the UN. To have international security, peace, justice, and international wellness throughout our world today. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. A couple of questions for you. Your topic was certainly very unique, and because of that, it probably imposed some difficulties on you. For instance, when you went to gather information and conduct research, you probably had to strategize a little bit different from everybody else. Can you describe the process you went through to find your evidence?
Right. So I couldn't find much empirical data or stuff regarding numbers of what popes did, because that's more of a social issue, not something you could put into concrete or facts. So I really had to find sources that described, or I had to find credible sources that describe the actions of the popes. And I didn't want to go to just any website that didn't have an author or something. I tried to get published journalists or popular journals or magazines, and I even quoted the Cardinal Secretary of State, who's second to command only to the Pope, and I feel like that's pretty credible sources.
Okay, terrific. And then as a follow-up, what would necessarily have to be the real-world implications or consequences of your findings? Like, if this really occurs, then what do you think will be the fallout? What do you think both the benefits and the drawbacks would be of including the Holy See on the Security Council?
So first of all, I think that you would hear a lot more about the Catholic view and how they pertain to the UN. I feel like they would be passing a lot more resolutions, voting on many more treaties, overall having much more action and trying to further the actions of the UN, not just staying pretty much a stalemate where we are right now.
Okay. Terrific, thank you.